Every peek, push, and trade is carefully planned and executed at the highest level of Valorant. Pro teams spend hours discussing, implementing, and refining each strat and protocol that they use. Today we're going to be looking into some pro VODs and dissect how teams work together to perfect the most fundamental part of the game, angles. We'll be focusing on why pro players are looking at where they are and what it enables their team to accomplish. There are nearly infinite situations to review, but we'll look at the most common ones. We're going to start by seeing how pro teams entry into and clear sites together. Then, we'll look at how they set up to hold and create flanks, followed by how pros coordinate aggressive plays on the defense. Lastly, we'll examine how pro players position and space themselves to enable trading, a core principle of TAC shooters. While not all of the things that pros do can directly be implemented into Ranked, this guide will certainly make you a better teammate and improve your understanding of Valorant. Valorant's competitive mode is Diffusal, centered around taking and defending a site. In the first section of this guide, we're going to examine how pros approach their site executes. There are three main components of successfully taking a site. There's the setup, getting in position and using your utility to aid your take. There's entrying, which is the point of actually going onto the objective. Then there's the post plant, in which teams set up to defend the area they just took. For this guide, we'll keep our focus on the middle one, as it has the most to deal with peeking and holding angles. When entering onto a site, professional players have carefully planned routes that they each follow to guarantee their team is accounting for each angle. Counter to what many guides suggest, pros actually do not slice the pie or clear each angle one by one. Often you'll see them completely ignore a common angle. However, this is due to their coordination. They trust that their teammates have or will clear that angle for them. Now let's look at a pro execute and examine what each player's role is. In the Berlin match of 100 Thieves versus Gambit, 100T were able to coordinate a successful B-site take on Split that led to their victory. They commenced the take with a guiding light and the null command to flash and disable defenders. Then, Asuna on Jett makes the first entry. He dashes from B main to pillar into his own smoke. Dashing into his own smoke prevents him from getting killed by the default player, but the dash also has another mechanic that people aren't as aware of. Notice that when he dashes, he actually looks to the right and he's able to clear the rafters and under heaven angles. After Asuna sees nobody to the right, Steel is free to run out looking left and clearing the close corner. Then with aid from a guiding light, Asuna and Ethan wrap back pillar to peek CT and pinch the default player. Meanwhile, Nitro and Hiko are helping on the default pinch and clearing backside when the Jett smoke fades. Through careful coordination, 100T are able to clear the site as a team, covering and trading each other expertly. Following up on site takes, let's have a look into another cornerstone of competitive Valorant, flanking. A flank is when a player manages to get behind an enemy team and catch players off. A position like this almost guarantees at least one kill, as it's unlikely that a player is able to react quick enough. Now that you get the concept, let's see how flanks are used in pro matches to win rounds, and also how teams play to hold the flank. In this round, Sentinels gets early information on G2's play from the Jett updraft and Sik's garage peek. This allows Sik to flank behind A lobby instantly. From there, Sik gets 2 free kills on players that are unaware of him. Then Sentinels is just able to pinch the remaining players who have to watch almost every angle. The power of a flank is clear. No matter how good a player is, you'll almost always win a fight when you take behind them. So pro teams use planned setups to mostly ensure that they cannot get flanked like G2 did in this round. These setups can take many forms, but there is one interesting one that has to do with angles that we'll look at in this guide. On flank-heavy maps, pro teams often leave a player in an unexpected off angle far away from the rest of their team. Some common spots to do this could be in the Icebox spawn or Haven mid. Essentially, if you read a push from the enemy team, it can be valuable to put someone in a spot where they are not actively helping your team but are holding for flankers. Now that we know about how powerful flanks can be, let's look at how pro teams approach getting aggressive on defense to either take an early flight or get on a fast flank. At the highest level, pros cannot just hold sites every round or their setups will be predictable and easy to counter. Thus, pro games are a constant tug of war of teams vying for information. On defense, one of the main ways to gain information is by taking control of a contested area. This could be bind showers or B long, Haven and splits mid, etc. However, pro teams simply cannot risk just dry walking into these areas. Taking aggressive control takes careful coordination of utility and peaks to make sure they trade effectively. In the following 2 clips of 100T's game versus Gambit, they use teamwork to take mid on split as defenders. In the first round that they tried their aggressive mid play, they have 4 members there to support each other. They essentially have 2 players watching each side. If any Gambit player would have swung mid early, they would have died. Sadly, off of the quietness, Steel got the wrong read and Ethan got picked falling off mid. However, the next time 100T tried some mid aggression, it was extremely successful. Off of the info Asuna gets peeking mid early and Steel's knife, they decide to have Asuna swing mid. They use the KO fragment to get the Gambit player out of his corner while Hiko deploys his toxic wall. This utility allows Asuna to isolate the single fight on a player trying to dodge utility. Then, Hiko puts down his wall, allowing Asuna to get a 3rd kill at bottom mid. In these examples, you can see how necessary teamwork is in taking control. In the first attempt, one small lapse in holding for each other resulted in Ethan getting picked for free, whereas in the second, Asuna mopped up the round. The final major component of pro microplay is trading and spacing. Pro players are extremely careful about where they position themselves in game to make sure that they do not hinder their teammates, while also being in a spot where they can swing for a trade if needed. In this section of the guide, we're going to examine the basics of how pros space themselves to guarantee they at least trade a kill. This mechanic really applies to almost every aspect of Valorant. On attack, sight hold, retakes, and clutches, where you put your agent matters. Let's look at an example of bad positioning that will make it obvious what I mean by being in a spot to trade teammates. In this clip, Defo manages to win an insane 1v4 for the ace. Even though his aim was elite, 100T could have easily prevented this had they played together. Looking at each individual kill Defo gets, notice how not a single 100T member is taking a duel at the same time as their teammate. For example, had Ethan just fallen to sight instead of taking the fight lane, he could have held a crossfire on lane with Hiko, who was stairs. Hiko clearly had this intention as he starts repositioning to default to back up Ethan. However, by taking the fight and losing it, Ethan left Hiko in a difficult clutch. These situations come up often, teams needing to close out 1v4s. Most of the time, even when a team misplays like this, they still eventually win a gunfight and mop it up. But if you just make sure to play these situations together and not let your ego take hold, you can guarantee these rounds. Valorant is a complex game of strategy, aim, and teamwork. By focusing on what angles you decide to hold and controlling which angles you swing at a time, you will drastically improve both your aim and teamwork. Make sure that you coordinate your sight takes so that you don't hold all the same spot, that your flank is accounted for, that you coordinate defensive pushes with your team's utility, and that you position yourself to fight with your teammates. By implementing these ideas into your own gameplay, you'll be more likely to get impactful kills that win games. And when you do lose to enemy clutches, think about how you could have repositioned yourself so that you would have traded or been traded by a teammate. As always, we here at Skill Capped want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.